This video is a field strip of an AR-15 assault rifle. The rifle that we have here has a GG&G Dominator 1 set of uppers on it, and the lowers are made by Bushmaster. Also has a GG&G bipod. Doesn't really come into play, of course, when we're field stripping it. Major difference in ARs would be whether you have a direct impingement or a gas piston operated rifle. This one is a direct impingement. The gas operated will have a small unit that sticks out right here that will need to be disassembled and cleaned. I do not have a gas piston to show you, so we're going to cover the direct impingement in this video. Okay, to begin disassembly here, we're going to take a look, and there are two round pins on this side of the rifle, and on the other you can see where the pins stick through here. And what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to push those down into the rifle. And on the other side, those will protrude just a little bit. We can pull those up. If they're a little tight, you might need to work them up with a pair of needle nose pliers or whatever you need to do. Just be very careful, of course, not to scratch the rifle. Once these are pulled out as far as they come, they don't actually remove from the rifle, but once they're pulled all the way out, the lowers will detach from the uppers, just like that. The lowers, of course, you're going to want to clean the trigger assembly very well and clean any additional powder that happens to be in around the magazine holder there. Now on the uppers, what we're going to do is we're going to pull back on the charging handle. As we pull back, the entire bolt assembly and the charging handle will come free of the rifle. The rest of the uppers here would be cleaned just like any other standard rifle, using a bore brush, patches, and solvent. One of the things that when people buy this particular rifle that they don't take into account, particularly on the direct impingement here, the way the direct impingement works is on the rifle here there is a small jet in the barrel that feeds gas back through a tube and into the receiver here on the bolt carrier group. So every time a round is fired, exhaust gas from the bullet is fed back into the bolt carrier assembly to push it back to eject the spent casing and to load the next round. So obviously when you're blowing exhaust gas back into the bolt carrier here, it's going to get very fouled up, very dirty, especially if you're using cheaper ammo. So this needs to be cleaned very well. And one of the mistakes a lot of people make when they purchase an AR is this piece needs to be completely disassembled in order to be thoroughly cleaned. Now to disassemble this, first thing we need to do is we need to remove the firing pin. And on this side of the bolt carrier, there's a small hole, and you'll see what looks to be the head of a cotter pin in there. Usually you can just use your fingernails, or you might need to get a pen, pry that out of there, but it's just basically a small cotter pin that needs to be removed. Once that's removed, the firing pin itself can be dropped out, and then the bolt, we're going to push it forward a little bit, and then the bolt retaining pin here, we're going to turn it 90 degrees so that the head of it will come out past the gas receiver. Once you have the bolt retaining pin out there, it once again can just be removed with your fingers. The bolt will drop out of the bolt carrier. The bolt needs to be thoroughly cleaned, scrubbed, get any carbon residue or fouling off of this piece, as well as the firing pin, and clean out the inside of the bolt carrier very well. Because as I said, especially with a DI gun, this is going to get very filthy, very filthy. If you have a gas piston rifle, you're going to need to clean the piston just as thoroughly as you would clean this, because it's going to foul up just as bad. All right, for reassembly, first thing we need to do is reinstall the bolt into the bolt carrier group, or into the bolt carrier rather, I'm sorry. Once the bolt's in place, we need to take the bolt retaining pin, drop it back down in the bolt, and rotate it 90 degrees, just like that. Firing pin needs to be placed back down in through the bolt. And then the firing pin retaining pin needs to be reinstalled just like so. Now make sure that the bolt is pulled all the way forward there, out away from the carrier. And then the charging handle, we need to line it up with a couple of little grooves down inside there. There's a couple of flares here in the charging handle that needs to be lined up so that it drops down in. They're going to make sure the gas receiver and bolt are toward the front end of the rifle, and they just snap back in place just like that. Now for the lowers, we're going to need to make sure we line the pins up with the pin blocks here. Once everything lines up, they just snap back in place and rifle is reassembled, ready to go. Do a function check. Again, I want to stress, if you want to own one of these, this is AR-15, that make sure and disassemble it, make sure and clean it properly every time you have it out to shoot it. Very fun rifle, very versatile rifle, very customizable rifle. Can be disassembled, made to look and function in a variety of different ways without spending a whole lot of money, and gets a bad rap mainly for the way it looks. It is the civilian model of the M16, which our military uses in combat, of course. So it's a very well built firearm, but also a very temperamental firearm in that you cannot let it clog up with carbon residue and crud from the ammo, especially if you're using a cheap ammo like Wolf ammo. It tends to foul up the firearm very badly. So make sure you clean it, make sure you take it apart, make sure you scrub it every time you're out shooting it, and you won't have any problems with it. Very, very, very good firearm and a lot of fun to shoot.